Well, good morning, everybody. This is Jamie Marcus at the Wyoming State Library, and I'm extremely excited to be hosting this program, Volunteer Programs in Wyoming Libraries. This program was brought about because we had several inquiries from librarians in the great state of Wyoming who wanted to know what other volunteer coordinators were doing and what their programs look like, and to really learn some of the pitfalls and some of the lessons that other folks have learned over the years. This is the first time we've done a program of this nature whereby we've invited a couple of volunteer coordinators to speak to everybody today, and then towards the end of the program we're going to open it up for general questions, discussions, and then share sessions from any of our participants today. This program is being recorded and will be used in our webinar archive. And without further ado, let me introduce our two speakers today. We have Andy Angstrom from the Teton County Library System, and to lead us off we have Julie Eatmon from the Laramie County Library System. So go ahead, Julie.
Thank you. My name is Julie Eatmon, Laramie County Library System volunteer specialist for about 5 years now, and I just have brought some ideas and things that work for our library and our volunteer program to share with you this morning. First off, the types of volunteers that we enjoy having at the library. We have young adult volunteers, retired adults, community service, and everyone else, which are like working adults and short-term service project people. And for each category of volunteers, what works for me at the library is I have different applications for each of the, so we have young adult applications and adult applications, community service applications, and also separate interviews for each one of them since their needs are different, and that's kind of how I try to meet their needs is by interview with them and having different applications for them so we can meet their goals as well. This is kind of a breakdown of the volunteers in numbers that we have at the Laramie County Library. We have about 100 young adult volunteers, about 350 retired adults, and less than 50 other or community service volunteers. Young adults. Young adults need opportunities. With young adults, there's a lot of challenges with their time. They have jobs, school, sports, everything, so giving them the opportunity to volunteer so that they can make a difference at the library. Also, training. Training is a challenge with young adults at our library because we have over 100 volunteers, like as I mentioned, and also because the young adult program is a lot more varied. They may come in to do crafts one time, the next time they're dressing up like the Hungry Caterpillar, the next time they're cutting out things, so it seems like each time they come in they're doing something different. So training is an ongoing process a lot with the young adult volunteers. Also motivating the young adult volunteers, besides their getting the benefits such as learning the new job skill, gaining their job experience and references. They also, we also provide like motivations like this. I think it's been one or 2 years now where we've offered them staff privileges for if they do a certain amount of time volunteering. Like in our library, it's 6 months time for 12 hours. And so every 6 months I evaluate their time, and then we do give them staff privileges so they don't get overdue charges. They get free DVDs and CD and rentals like that, so, and they can order discount books, and that seems to be a motivating factor for them as well. Training young adult volunteers. Like I said, they have, each time they come to the library, a lot of times they'll be doing something different, so it's an ongoing process in training. And it's some of the pitfalls that I've experienced, so I've come up with, like making expectations clear is I come up with job descriptions for every job and task lists. So they know what they're doing and also what the outcome of their time is supposed to accomplish, so that they have a goal in mind, and defining the tasks, and also demonstrating what you would like them to do. Sometimes people might learn better by watching you do it and then duplicating that. Adult volunteers, their needs and benefits are a little bit different, especially with their needs. Some volunteers, and you'll get this from the interview process, but scheduling wise, some want to be flexible. They've had a job 9 to 5. They want to have a flexible, different kind of experience, and some want to continue on a structured experience. They want the knowledge they are making a difference, and that is one of the highly motivating factors I have found with adult volunteers. Is that's what motivates them to volunteer, and so that's an important thing for them. And they have more specialized skills, whereas with the young adults, they're for the most part learning skills. The adult volunteers are offering their specialized skills, maybe something they're the expert at that they can bring to the library. Benefits, the library gains skilled workers in specialized areas, and usually they're very long-term volunteers. Training adult volunteers, they are very task-oriented and invest for the long term. So it might take longer, whereas with young adult volunteers, I found it's an ongoing process. With the adult volunteers, it might be a longer initial training, but I found that they are long-term volunteers for the most part, and listening to their needs as far as their scheduling needs, what they have to offer, or what they would like to do, if they want to work with books, if they want to work with people, just kind of listening to what their idea is for what they'd like to offer. Cultivating and networking, also known as recruiting. Recruiting volunteers is basically talking about volunteering when, like, we go to some RSVP events or other library events, and I always try to talk about the volunteering and word-of-mouth recommendations, giving people a positive experience as volunteers. And a lot of volunteers will bring in their friends to volunteer, and or if they're going to be on vacation, they bring in people who are going to enjoy doing the job. Acknowledge everyone's individual successes on a daily basis if you can. When you see the volunteers, always try to do that. And tap into your circle of influence, not just your circle of influence, like who do I know that could be good at doing this, but who does maybe other volunteers or other staff members know that might be interested. Requests or advertisement for recruiting can also work. I don't believe we've ever really used that personally at our library, but I know that is also even in like the library's newsletters and things. And lastly, but maybe mostly important, is just asking somebody. Sometimes I know if I've put out an email, we need volunteers for this, I don't get a very huge response, but if I ask somebody personally and they haven't really thought about that often works. So just to ask. Some of the motivation for volunteers that we use in our library is planning tasks in advance and getting as much advance as we can so that we can get the best volunteers for the job that they'll be happy in doing. We offer other benefits like staff privileges I mentioned before, and we've implemented some national awards, such as I've put the websites, the congressionalaward.org and the Presidential Service Award. Both of those, the Congressional Award is pretty much an online award. The Presidential Service Awards are something that the library keeps track of hours, and it's more like library oriented, and then we order them through the Presidential Service Award. And I think the volunteers were really thinking it was a very cool thing, because it got the letter from the president, and their pin, and they got the recognition at the volunteer celebration, and I think they were really pleased. And I know people asked me after the initial, this will be our second year doing it, but the first year they asked me, how do I get to earn that? And so I think that is a motivation too. Explaining the importance of the job that they're doing for the library, like how important what they're doing is making a difference. Like I was saying, in our book sale room, sometimes the volunteers don't realize that just because they're not busy constantly or all the time, they think, that maybe they're not making a difference. But I always try to tell them, we made $3,000 in the book sale room last month, and that helps them just to see what the group effort is and the importance of what they're doing. And the recognition part, which is important. We always do the volunteer recognition celebration once every year, just to provide formal recognition for everyone. So what do the volunteers do? These are some of the volunteer jobs that volunteers do at our library, which each one of them has a job description. So first off, for the administration area, we have the foundation and system boards, clerical aides, people who help with the facilities. Circulation, we have the notification mailers, people who come in on a daily basis in the morning to send out hold notices. We have shelf readers and magazine filers, book on tape shelvers, AV repair assistants and billing assistants. Youth and outreach services, we have volunteers. For the most part, they're the teenagers who prepare for the programs and crafts and attend the programs and craft sessions. And they also participate on the Teen Advisory Board. And we also have weekly volunteers that do pretty much the shelving, filing, making flannel boards, just the things that need to get done in the youth services area. Access services, we have volunteers who rotate the newspapers, mend books, do interlibrary loans, process the books, and we recently added volunteers who teach computer classes. Other jobs within our library, the book sale room attendants and the genealogy assistants, they are the volunteers that pretty much run that department, that area. The book sale room is entirely run by volunteers, and genealogy works with the genealogy librarian to help with genealogy. Hiring volunteers. I have applications, one for each type of volunteers. So we have like young adult applications, community service applications, short-term applications, and then just regular adult applications. You might not find that your library would need all those different types, but I find it's helpful for us to get the different information and different things. Like if you have a person doing community service, you want to know what their deadline is, what their hours are, so maybe different applications might help you. The different job interviews for volunteers, job descriptions for each job that the volunteers do in the library. I think that's really important because the job description helps you or the person who's training the volunteer just to train everybody on a consistent level. It reminds you of all the things that they're trained on, and also it helps them realize how many hours it's going to be a week and what the expectations of that job is. So I find those helpful. Orientation, and then the initial training, and then procedures, which we designed a volunteer handbook for. So the tools that might help you to create or start your volunteer program is, I find my Access database is a very good tool. Initially it takes a while to set up, but when you're doing the volunteer celebration at the end of the year, you just run a report and it tells you everybody who's volunteered, everybody who's active. If you want to know everybody who's volunteered in youth services, if you want to evaluate job or staff privileges for the volunteers, how many people qualify for that, it's a really good tool to have. And then the applications and job descriptions, and just to communicate with your volunteers. I'm trying to have some sort of wiki with a password and things where volunteers can communicate with one another, and but right now we have just like a pass-on notebook, which works too. So some of the pitfalls that I've had that I've learned to try to avoid is to being consistent with volunteers. At first, when I first started, I would call everybody, reminder calls, and that just sometimes is not something I can do all the time. So that was something that I wasn't consistent with, and so it's good to be consistent in your training and the way you work with the volunteers. Over-investing, sometimes, like, I know the college a lot of times around this time of year will come in as a group and want to do a service project. So it's a one-time project versus like a long-term volunteer. Knowing the jobs that often there's just like jobs that you could do if a volunteer drops in at, and they're finished with their usual job, or they want extra hours that week. Knowing like jobs that are on the back burner that could be done is kind of good to have a list of, or something like that, and having the tools, the listed tools above the database and the job descriptions and such. Those are all things that are good to have when you're doing your volunteer program. High impact jobs are also something that volunteers want to participate in, because those are the jobs that make a big difference, and that was one of the big motivators I find that the volunteers want. So I always look for opportunities, maybe like asking staff, what could a volunteer do for you so that you could do something else with, free up some of your time. So like, even though we have job descriptions now, as I said, we started volunteers to teaching the computer classes and just different things that come up. So it's an evolving process of the volunteer jobs that are available. And so we look for opportunities to open new jobs for volunteers, keeping an open mind, and it's an evolving process.
Okay, thank you, Julie. I really appreciate that. I have a couple questions for you before we move on to Andy. And the first is, could you talk a little bit about do you accept all of the community service folk who come in or need to do community service?
For the most part, we do. I know that they're usually a short-term volunteer, but there have been volunteers who have enjoyed volunteering, and they continue on after their community service. And so that's in one of those processes where they start out at a certain position, and if they're showing up on time and doing their hours and enjoying volunteering, then maybe they can do something else and kind of work up to that. So,
okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
And then could you tell everybody how much your book sale room makes every year?
We've made last fiscal year over $30,000. So, and that is entirely run by the book sale room volunteers. So it's a good thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And I know as we move on to Andy's presentation and you start to think about any questions you have for anybody, including other folks who are not presenting today, please keep track of any of the tools that are mentioned, because perhaps they'd be willing to share what they have so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to turn this right over to Andy Angstrom from the Teton County Library System.
Great, thank you very much. This presentation is really revolving on the larger structure of our Friends non-for-profit organization here at the Teton County Library. And we can go into more details later on if anybody has any questions. Just starting off, let's see, Jamie, how do I work this? Do I tell you to go to the next slide?
Yeah, just go ahead and tell me to go to the next slide, and I'll do it.
All right. Can you go to the next slide? So the Teton County Library family is made up of three different entities. The main entity is the Teton County Library, which is funded by the government and the state. And then we have two different non-for-profits that also help out the library. First is the Teton County Library Foundation, which is basically a non-for-profit that helps out with supplemental funding for the library. It's more of the fundraising branch of the family. And then, of course, we have the Friends of the Teton County Library, which is what I'm the volunteer coordinator for the Friends of the Teton County Library. And this is the branch that primarily takes care of all of the volunteerism for the Teton County Library. And in that family, we kind of all come together and make a community center. Go to the next slide. The original purpose of Friends of the Teton County Library, in respects to the library, was really to get an organization that can really organize the volunteer base for the Teton County Library. The purpose of the Friends was to basically help out the library, to instill passion for learning for the and use of the library resources, to support library programs through volunteerism, and to promote the Teton County Library as an essential well-being of the community. So those three that are underlined down there are the mission statement of the Friends of Teton County Library. You can go to the next slide. Basically, how Friends works, at least the finance portions of it, is we primarily work off of a biannual book sale. The book sale, and this is a little circle here that I'll go through, basically is the funding portion of the Friends of Teton County Library. The books come in from the community and basically go and get sold into the book sale. That money goes into our operating budget. I, as the volunteer coordinator, use that money to recruit and retain volunteers throughout the community. And then the volunteers, in turn, help process all the books that we get. And then we sell the books at the book sale, and that continues the cycle. You can go to the next slide. The Friends also, instead of just doing the book sale, really we have a lot of different volunteers that help out with different functions in the library, much as like Julie's presentation. Here are just some four main branches of how the volunteers help in the library. First of all, our administrative branch in the Teton County Library, we have volunteers helping with that. They primarily do recycling duties, and they do facilities needs such as picking up garbage around the grounds and among many other things. The volunteers have a really big hand that they help out with the education and programs. They do poster distribution, which we have kind of a tough time getting all of our programs out to the community, letting everybody know what we're doing. So the poster distribution ends up being a huge job. So we have volunteers that help us do that. And then we also have program assistants where volunteers come in and help with our story times or our teen programs, and even sometimes host some of our adult programs. Within the library, we have the interlibrary loan, which we have about 4 very dedicated volunteers that help process all of the different books that we're trying to ship to the different libraries in the state. That they play a huge hand in just the processing and the mailing portion of the interlibrary loan. And then lastly, the public services, which is we have volunteers that do a lot of shelf reading and then do many different various reference projects. We just got rid of a lot of books out of our Western Americana section that the volunteers primarily did most of the work. Next slide. So some specifics about the Friends of Teton County Library is, first of all, that we're an independent nonprofit. We have about 120 active volunteers at any one time. There is obviously you lose some volunteers that are losing interest or move away, and then we also gain volunteers. We had about it's been going up as time goes along, but right now we have about 120 active volunteers. Let's see, TCL, through the book sales, we're raising upwards of $10,000 per year right now with the book sales, and we have a pretty good bargain, but we have a lot of different methods on getting kind of more bang for our buck when it comes to selling some of our books. And our volunteers are primarily the purpose or the reason for that. They do a lot of sorting. They do a lot of basically scanning all the ISBN numbers of every book that comes through to see what it's worth, and then if it's worth more, then we try to put it into a silent auction. If it's worth less, we'll put it for $1, and so it's still a good deal for the community. But the actual book sales are very complicated. We have a lot of details there. So if you have any questions about the book sales specifically, I can definitely answer those. And then we have average about 400 volunteer hours per month that we get going from the TCL from our 120 volunteers. And I use this number from 2007 was a number the IRS used for average volunteer hours in money, which is 19.56, and I think it's actually up to $20.25 now. But we basically try to give a dollar value of how our libraries are doing in-kind volunteer time, and we're generating around $120,000 per year for the library at TCL. Next slide. These are just some questions. I wasn't quite sure how this was going to work, but these are some prompts for anybody that has any questions. There's some questions that I'd love to answer if anybody has them. But I actually have another slide after this, Jamie, if you would, that goes into a little bit more detail on how the book sale works. I'll just do that real quickly, and then if we can go into questions, that'd be great. First of all, we have about 20% of our donated books that we have at the library come from the weeded books that come out of our collection. And then about 80% comes from the community just dropping books off. We don't have any restrictions on which books they can bring. They can bring anything they want. Even if it's a damaged book, we have a recycling plan for that damaged book. So we have a lot of books coming in. In fact, we fill up 2 sheds worth every 6 months for the book sale. Then we sort them all, which is a very, very time-consuming process. We have 2 or 3 main volunteers that go through probably upwards of 500 books per week, just trying to figure out where they fall within the price range at the book sale. We go ahead and sell the books, mostly at $1 per book at the book sale. And then, again, that operating budget goes into recruitment for new volunteers, as well as retainment for the volunteers that we have. And that is it for this presentation.
Hey, thank you, Andy. I really appreciate your presentation. Before we get into sort of the general chit-chat and share session, does anybody have any questions specifically for Julie?
I do.
Yeah, go for it.
I was interested in your teen motivation. You have sounds like you have a very organized. I used to be a teacher, and I realized how much work goes into teens. How complicated do you get with your program for teens?
Well, as far as what they're volunteering for, or in training them?
No, it sounds like, I guess, the motivation piece. It sounds like you have a very, I guess, how structured is this? Do you have a lot of different documents that you're giving them? And I guess I don't have that at all. I'm very interested in trying to develop something.
Well, as far as the staff privilege part and the presidential service awards and things, those are all things that I do. So it doesn't really provide, they don't have to do any more work to do it. I just keep track of it on the database, and then it makes it really easy for me with no more paperwork for them, because that would, they kind of independently do the congressional awards, because that goes beyond the volunteer. It also can go into, like, if they do scouting, if they do sports, they do piano, whatever. So that's a little bit, the library is just a piece of that, but with the Presidential Service Award, it's entirely just the library, the hours they do at the library. So I keep track of that, and then you have to order them, all the awards, online, and then you get them hopefully by the time that you have your appreciation awards. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, that's good.
Other questions for Julie? Okay, how about questions for Andy?
Jamie, this is Pat.
Hi, Pat.
Hi, I got a question for Julie. What software program do you use to track your volunteer hours and that? And then, as a follow-up, do they sign into a computer database when they arrive to do their job?
Yeah, right now I use just an Access database that I just took like a day class, and it's fairly easy to set one up, just a basic one. And my database keeps track of everything that's on their application, you know, the basic information and where they're working at and what day they volunteered, how many hours, and just like little notes about them, like can never work on Tuesdays, or, you know, things like that that's going to help you organize them. And then we do have a place where we don't have them sign up on the computer. It's just like paper, and they just sign up, sign in, and sign out. And then on a weekly basis, we enter those into the database. And that way, every week, if they're doing community service, we can give them a printout of their hours. And that's another benefit. You can, like, if somebody wants their hours for a project they're doing, you just have to, you know, click a little report and do a printout for their hours. And so I think the database is a very helpful tool.
What was the name of it?
It's just an Access database.
Microsoft Access?
Access, okay.
Julie, would that be something that you'd be willing to share?
The database?
Yeah, the
Sure,
database.
Sure.
Okay. I'll tell you what, as I think about this, those of you who have tools, I suppose is the right word out there, be it volunteer handbooks or applications or interview sheets or something, if you would send them to Jamie Marcus at the State Library, which is me, I will put them up on our webinar archive page as a one-stop place for you to share some material here for the next couple days. So if you would, you know, send that to me by early next week, I'll put it up when I put up the archive.
Great.
Are there other questions out there? Okay, I see movement in the room across from me, so I know they're unmuting.
Jamie,
Oh, go ahead.
this is Francis. My question is, for Teton County, with all the sorting of the donations, is there staff involved at that first step? In Cody and in the other libraries, sometimes the branch librarians often will go through the donations when they come in to see if there's anything really good and new that might be in addition to the collection. Is that done in other libraries?
I can't speak for all the libraries. I can speak for the Teton County Library. And yes, we have, basically our process is they come directly into the Friends. The Friends start to sort them, and then we have our collection development staff know that the books are available for them to peruse and see if there's anything that they might be missing, or maybe a brand new book that's in there that would be a good addition to their specific collection. However, it happens, it happens a small percentage of the time. Most of the time, our collection development already has the book, but there is a chance for the staff to do that.
Okay, thank you.
But mostly it's volunteer going through it. I mean, it's primarily volunteer run.
Thank you.
Sure.
Kristen from Carbon County, and I have a couple questions. But my first one is, I've seen different volunteer programs in different libraries, but I know, I don't know how many years ago it was, but I think it was the Fair Labor Standards. They made some changes, and one of the changes they made about volunteers could not do the work of employees. Supposedly that was a protection of employees' rights and everything, but I know some libraries stopped having volunteers do shelving and doing very specific tasks because those were things that employees were also doing. How do you handle that?
Is that directed toward me?
Anybody?
No.
Is anybody worried about that? Does anybody have a solution for that? Any advice on following labor law? or I don't even know the exact labor code, but I've heard from various people that volunteers are not supposed to do the work of employees. So how do we as librarians handle that?
I personally, I don't know the answer to that question. I know that there are certain lines that are drawn within our library. For example, we have people that shelf read, but we do not have volunteers that actually do the paging and putting books away. Although I know that is done by volunteers in other libraries. So I'm not quite sure how that line is distinguished.
There are other folks out there who can answer that question?
I can't answer. This is Frances. I can't answer the question, but I guess I have some concern. When I came to work here, there had been a long-standing tradition of using volunteers in all departments to supplement the work provided by paid employees. We have volunteers in technical services who look up things and put on spine labels and do tasks like that. We have 2 employed part-time pages, but we also have 2 volunteer pages as well who come in, and they want to come in and shelve books because they like to look at them and see what they want to check out. And am I breaking the law?
I don't know. I'm just stirring the pot.
I think my interpretation of this was that if it was a duty that was part of a job, it would be okay. But if it's an entire position, meaning if we have a page that is working and he is putting books away, that's part of their job. But then they have other responsibilities such as I don't know, they have their own desk and they're looking at emails and they have to keep up on library, the functionality of the library and what's going on with the different departments. Then that would be not necessarily a good idea to have a volunteer doing it. I think that might be breaching it. This is the understanding that I have. It's not really coming from any specific background, but I do think it's just part of a position is okay, but not necessarily the full position.
Can I respond to that again? This is Frances. The part-time pages, shelf books, they also are involved with sorting and discharging and organizing and doing other related tasks, whereas the volunteers just come in, they get a book truck, it's already sorted, organized, and ready to go out and be shelved. Is that enough of a distinction?
This is, I was going to say, this, Jamie, this is probably something that you may want to take up with your county attorney. However, that being said, and I'm no legal expert here, but if we haven't had a problem with it in the past, it may not be something you want to have a problem with in the future. So there's always that wait till you get a complaint, too. Although Kristen thinks two steps ahead. So.
I'm just going to throw out another thing. Is anybody doing background checks of their volunteers? And is that even a concern?
Yes, we do. We do. This is Frances. We do background checks, especially of any volunteer who wants to work in the children's or teen department.
And how do you do your background check, Frances?
Well, we call references. We get references, and we also, if we are really concerned, we will call the police department.
Thanks.
Other folks get background checks, and do you have a procedure?
Yeah, this is Pat. Campbell County, we do background checks too. Like Frances said, if they're working in the teen or with children, we do that, and we have a form, and we send them to the sheriff's department here, and they do the fingerprinting and everything, and we do the state check. Our library foundation pays the $35 to have that done. That's what we do.
Great. Do we have some more questions? I mean, open to anybody at any, for anything, or share. Does anybody want to share a really cool volunteer program that you've done, or some recognition? Or my favorite thing is, and you could leave your name off this, but did you really screw up sometime and have a volunteer do something that probably wasn't the best idea you've ever had? And you could say it was from another library, and we'll totally believe you.
Hi, this is April in Teton County. I just had a question for either Andy or Julie or anybody really. What kind of volunteer interviews do you do, and do you have a handout for that? Does it vary with volunteer types or ages?
Well, I do have an interview process, and I do have it does vary with the young adult volunteers. It's usually, what their expectations are, what their schedules are, and then we go into a more detailed orientation that includes a tour of their area and things like that. And then with the adults, it's a lot too of what do you expect to get from volunteering, and what their schedules are. What if they're wanting a flexible schedule, that's going to clue you in, okay, well, they can't do notices, then it kind of helps you find the perfect job for them. And so it's pretty much just asking them questions like that. Would you rather work in the public or with the books, or things like that? But I can give that to Jamie to put out too with the.
Absolutely. I'm making a list of tools that I've been hearing about, and we'll put them up on the Webinar Archive website. And if you have any that you have, please send them to me, by early next week.
And to answer that question for the Teton County Library, we have, I do my best to have a individualized interview / orientation with every volunteer that shows interest. And during that, I give them a good the breadth of what goes on here at the library, as well as try to figure out where their strengths will lie. And I think somebody just mentioned the perfect job, and I really want to emphasize that. I try to tell them I would rather have them have a job that they absolutely love to come to the library and do, rather than skills that they can do. Because everybody has some skills that they can do, but we really, my motivation is to try to get a volunteer that loves to come here for intrinsic motivation. And so anyway, they have a small application that they fill out, and then we really kind of get to hone in on exactly what they're interested in doing at the library, that they would kind of keep some longevity and come back to the library, week after week and help us out.
That's great. Thanks, Andy.
Other questions, comments, stories?
I have a question for the people that have a kind of a longer application process, because we don't necessarily have an application process. If there's somebody that's interested and they come in, I usually just kind of make a meeting with them and do an orientation. But does anybody that does a big application process as well as a background check have problems with that process deterring their volunteers to come in, or new volunteers to come in?
Campbell County, Pat, we haven't had any issues with it at all. Mm-hmm. Actually, people are happy when we talk to them about a background check. It hasn't been an issue.
Good to know.
Other questions or comments or anything, really?
This is Frances. Not at this time. I found this very interesting, though, to see how you manage. We do not have a staff person who is a volunteer coordinator. It's sort of handled by the branch librarian and the various departments. And I'm interested in seeing how we can streamline our processes.
This is Kristen from Carbon County, and I remember seeing April's request on, I think, PubLib about volunteers, and that was kind of a start of a conversation at Carbon County. We've been talking about our volunteers, and I know that I want some sort of an application. I don't want to have an overkill application, an overkill interview, but I'd like to see some sort of formalized way of saying that this is something you volunteer to do, but there's responsibilities attached to it. And I want to make sure that we have the steps in place. So I'm excited about seeing some of the samples and having that information shared, because why reinvent the wheel? So this is exciting to me.
I know that like some of the like on our website there's the initial want to volunteer for us, just to get the contact information, and on there it has like volunteer responsibilities and the volunteer rights, and so that's kind of a good way. I like to like just have a contact information at first, not give them a two-sided volunteer application and everything like that at first, and then just get their contact information, and like Andy said, meet them on a one-to-one basis, and then kind of go from there. So
What else, everybody? Well, this is the first time we've done a share session like this. I know that we have a lot of people who will be watching the webinar and unfortunately can't share, but may have been asking questions to their computer screen. You just don't know. I just want everybody to know where the webinar archive is. If you go to the Wyoming State Library homepage, and on the right side here, somewhere, it says Webinar Archive, and if you click that, we're going to be right up here at the top early next week. And you can watch that, watch it at night, show your parents, whatever it is you're interested in doing with this video, it's yours to do with. If you would send me, Jamie Marcus at the State Library, any of the tools that you've mentioned today, or any tools that you have that you didn't mention, I'll be more than happy to host them and put them up with the webinar archive so we can really share everything that's out there. There's no use to reinvent anything. I know everybody's good at something, and some of the tools that you've been using for years may be the best thing ever in a whole new county. So I'd like to thank you for participating. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I make a request of Julie? Is that all right?
sure.
Those documents that you use, just the structure of your teen, the organization of your teen program for volunteering, is there any way that you could possibly send those to Jamie?
Sure.
Great, I appreciate that. Is there anything that anybody would like me to send specifically?
Oh, just everything.
Jamie, this is Pat at Campbell County. I had a question.
Sure, go ahead, Pat.
Okay. Anybody out there using volunteers in their outreach department or homebound visitation?
No, but this is Frances. I just remembered something we do that I didn't even bring up. We have a program called Circuit Readers. And these are volunteers who have had background checks and who work with the children's librarian in the Park County Public Library in Cody, collecting books from the collection and taking them to child care centers where they can't really transport the children to the libraries for story time. And we have a number of volunteers who have been faithfully doing this for 3 or 4 years now. The program kicked off 4 years ago. And every so often somebody drops off, and then we recruit some more, and we're currently in a recruiting mode because we'd like to have a few more because as people learn about it, they ask to be included. So that's a pretty neat program.
Francis, we do that at Campbell County with teens. We send them to the Children's Center after training them, and they sit and they read to the kids.
Teenagers do. Oh, that's neat.
They love it.
Maybe we should focus we have more like grandma types who've been doing it and who love it.
Talk to Sue Niesel. She does that here.
I will. I know Sue, yeah. Thank you.
And we have a Books on Wheels program that kind of partially does the same thing, where we have people that go and read to people in the senior center here in Jackson, as well as bring books to members of the community that cannot make it to the library. So we have a couple volunteers involved in that program.
So they're delivering books?
They deliver books, and actually one of them, there's one that I'm aware of that actually reads books also to the members of the senior center.
We have this is Francis. We have a staff member who is developing a senior outreach program and who goes one morning a week to the assisted living facility here in Cody, as well as the long-term care center, and takes books to people and reads to one of the ladies who can no longer read but can hear. And this inspires me to suggest that she start recruiting some volunteers to work with her on it. I think that'd be a great idea.
Well, that was fantastic. Are there any other questions, comments, or programs you'd like to share?
This is Carla. I have a question about throughout the year, do you do anything special to keep, your special for the volunteers, other than the award ceremonies and things like that? Something that will keep them interested, or, oh, well, this is really nice. I'm glad I'm a volunteer. Any of you that are having the program?
This is Pat at Campbell. I write little notes to my volunteers when they've done a great job on something. If I've assigned a certain task, and I write a personalized note. I also give them little Christmas gifts, just small things, maybe a pen or something. Those kinds of things.
Just some acknowledgement that they are doing a good job and we really want to keep you here, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Francis, the Cody Library has the largest number of volunteers. Powell and Matizzi have relatively small numbers, and in Cody they hold the staff hosts a dinner for the volunteers and invites all the volunteers to come and be recognized, and it's a potluck supper and a celebration of the contributions of the volunteers.
Thank you.
I'd like to reiterate on that we just started a staff and volunteer mixer, because I think one of the best ways to appreciate your volunteers is to have them feel like they're part of the community at the library, and trying to bolster that relationship between staff and volunteers is one kind of broad way we're trying to appreciate our volunteers as well as some little things like thank you notes and small gifts here and there.
Any other questions? Anyone else?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you. This was interesting.
Well, I know that at least Andy and Julie have promised to answer any of your questions by email, appropriate questions by email, and I'm sure that everybody else who's here wouldn't mind being contacted either. And one last plug, if you send me any of your tools, I'll put them up early next week and we can share. I appreciate you coming. This is the first time we've done sort of this interactiveness. I know we'll probably, can learn a few things from this one. But if you really enjoyed or didn't like this type of webinar or phone call, please drop me a line and we'll see how we can make this better in the future. But I thank you all for participating, and I hope you have a great weekend.